Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Quote Unquote with KK. We wish you a very happy and healthy 2025. Today, we are going to talk about is achieving the customer orgasm possible in healthcare? Let me roll back to our health and life sciences investment manifesto, which we released in the middle of last year. And we talked about health and wellness fascism and also discussed on some of the issues around rebuilding trust. We talked about the generational shift and the attitudes of various generations towards healthcare and life sciences products and services, and hence the need to discuss how do we recover back from the lows of COVID towards healthcare and life sciences as an industry by the consumer and their pushback to the industry, and rebuilding that trust and giving the customer the orgasm back. Let's call it mojo. We do not know whether this will be banned or not as a word, but we will continue to use it. Let me introduce you to our guest today. He's the person who introduced the concept of customer orgasm, and he is Harish Bijoor. His chat GPT profile reads like he's a well-known brand and business strategy specialist with over 2 decades of corporate experience. Harish is the founder of Harish Bijoor Consults Inc., a private label consulting firm that specializes in brand and business strategy across various domains. He is a recognized thought leader for marketing, advertising, and often discussing trends and strategies in these fields. Additionally, he's been a faculty member of Indian School of Business for 20 years and has teaching engagement at International Business School. Harish has held significant positions in major companies. He was the chief operating officer at Zip Telecom Limited, then spent a good part of his career with Tata Coffee, where he played key role in launching several value-added coffee brands. He has authored several books, and his last book was titled Marketing Trends, Smart Insight into the World of Indian Business. And he is working on his second book focused on core branding, and we'll talk about it also during our podcast today. There could be some surprises here as well. So, welcome to a brand new podcast of 2025, and I welcome back all of you to an engaging conversation today with Harish. Welcome, Harish, to our podcast. It's a pleasure
Thank
having
you.
you here, and Happy New Year to you and all the people out there working with you. Let me begin off the bat the customer orgasm concept. I hope we are not going to get banned for using that word.
Okay. First of
Can
all,
you please
Kapil,
elaborate the concept?
yeah. See, firstly, Kapil, a very happy new year to all those who are watching, listening, whatever is going on. 2025 is an exciting year, and I'm told it's a square year. Okay, and to
Okay.
that extent, it simply means to say that it's a mathematically aligned year.
Uh-huh.
And if you look at 25, it means that we've finished about 25 years, literally, of this new millennium. The millennials are so yesterday. The alpha generation is just about rearing its head in the market. And as all this happens, we live in exciting times. So let me come to this terminology, which I have coined, which also happens to be the title of my new book. And I hope it doesn't get banned, which is customer orgasm. Okay. Now, why did I call it customer orgasm? I do believe, thinkers over the last 42 years have spoken about different ways of taking care of the customer. And I think we started with the lowest common denominator version, which was all about saying there's something called customer satisfaction. Customers must be satisfied. And I think in an era when there were just too many customers out there, who had a great big demand for products and services which were not available, customer service served the market well. You just gave the customer service and that was fine. But then came an era when, the customers were getting to be a little more demanding. Customers said that, there are many other players who I could go to. And at that point of time, in comes the second stage of development development of the customer service movement, and it became customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction meant that the customer need not only be served, but the customer had to be satisfied. You had to leave him with a smile on his or her face. And then, even that became pari passu. And in comes the third movement, and in came marketing thinkers about 28 years ago, and they brought in a new lingo called customer delight. You had to delight the customer. The happy face and, moments which said that, the moment you serve someone in the United States of America, you were serving at a restaurant, and you had to say at the end of that plate touching the table, you needed to say enjoy. And you needed to say enjoy looking into the eye of the guy you were serving. And in came that moment. So 28 years ago, and in came customer delight. This was level 3 of service. Level 4 of service is one rung higher, and it goes up and it comes and says customer ecstasy is a moment, because you need to make the customer ecstatic. And I said enough is enough about 4.5 years ago when I started research for this new book. And I said I need to invent lingo, which is superior to it all. Not only lingo, but accompanying mechanisms which take better degree of service to the customer. And I came up with this terminology called customer orgasm. Now, why customer orgasm? Because you need to leave the customer orgasmic after he has secured your product or service. The customer out there today is a him, her, or a them. All of them need to be delighted, but beyond delight, they need to be ecstatic. Beyond being ecstatic, they need to be having a literal high with the customer orgasm. And that's the title of my new book. And this book really talks about 4 cases of customer service, 4 cases of customer satisfaction, another 4 in terms of delight, another 4 in terms of ecstasy. And I have made up 4 new cases, which talk about customer orgasm. Simply to say that if you're a healthcare organization and if you are catering to the lowest common denominator today, you need to climb 4 steps. If you don't, you're going to be left behind. So every business has something to learn from this concept called customer orgasm. You need to give it to the customer, and the customer will stay with you only if he, she, or they enjoys this ultimate in customer service, satisfaction, delight, ecstasy, and orgasm offering.
Since I'm from the healthcare, there's a process of reaching the orgasm, which is also linked to certain hormonal release in the brain.
Absolutely. So if you ask me, everything is so sensorial in branding.
Correct.
Branding is a sensorial process. You see a brand, you touch a brand, you smell a brand, you taste a brand, you experience a brand, and then eventually it's the ultimate interaction which happens when literally, the largest organ in the human body interacts with it. I don't call it a brain. I do call it the interstitium. And the interstitium is the largest organ in the body. And I think this interstitium is what needs to get impact. And to an extent, this entire sensorial process leads to customer orgasm.
So you also need to have the dopamine hit, the serotonin.
Absolutely.
And
I think
all
dopamine,
the other
serotonin going on overdrive, dopamine being out there in a big way, your entire body experiencing a brand to such an extent that you go berserk and mad, and you say that I am willing to pay a price which is irrational, which is idiotic, which is abnormal, but still I pay that price.
So let us hope that we don't get banned for using certain other connotations here. But the whole process of reaching the high to the orgasm also has an experiential process. Would you like to talk a little bit about that journey itself in terms of how the customer evaluates you, the buying process, usage process, and then the orgasmic process, and then the post-orgasmic process? I don't want to use the sexual terminology here, but are there some frameworks, something that you have gone through, or certain parameters that you have kind of pulled this together as an analogy in this whole thing, which you would like to share with us?
Absolutely. Kapil, if you really look at the entire theory of customer orgasm, it is built on some basic fundamentals. The basic fundamental, of course, traverses the old routes of saying there's something called called a customer persona. There is a kind of a customer tracking, which really builds up that persona. There is a kind of a profiling, and then you offer to the customer what he, she, or they wants. But in addition to all of it, there is this science which I believe in strongly and deeply, which is called brand chemistry. Brands are fundamentally, in my definition, and this is the title of my first book, I really say the brand is a thought. So when somebody asks me, please define a brand, I say the brand is a thought, full stop. Nothing more, nothing less. So to that extent, every brand is a thought. And that thought is a simple thought. Every one of us has about 850 thoughts in our head. Each of these thoughts are brands. And guess what? These are not brands of auto, telecom, or healthcare, but they're literally every other brand. Your granddad, your favorite granddad is possibly a super brand in your head. Your grandmom is possibly a super brand. And a jealous uncle who's living in Houston is possibly a terrible brand. But positive or negative brands live in mind. So the brand is a thought lives in a person's mind. What's complex about it? The complexity is the fact that as many people as there are in the market, that many different varied thoughts of that same one brand. So let's take a brand. Let me take a brand called Apple. And if I take Apple is a thought, a brand is a thought that lives in a person's mind. Simple. But if there are 8 billion people on the planet, every one of those 7 billion people, if I remove infants, etc., who actually think of the brand Apple, think of it differently. In someone's mind, Apple is a 10 on 10. Someone's mind, it's 2 on 10. And that is the brand task. Brand is a thought that lives in a person's mind. Simple. Complexity in every mind, that thought is a different thought. Ironing it out, evening it out, creating one thought in each of those minds of equal value is the task. That's the brand task and brand ask.
So from the thought to the emotion to then orgasm would be a great way to probably define that journey as what we now keep talking in a digital and phygital way of the customer journeys and stuff like that, according to you, or is it something much beyond that?
Yeah, I think it's beyond that. Customer journeys are so yesterday. I mean,
Correct.
they are so 2024. I'm really talking about cutting edge, bleeding edge stuff where we're really talking about going much beyond that. We have overused this entire customer persona, customer profiling, customer journeys, customer experiential tracking, and we've moved into the sensorial era today. We're really talking about customer sensorial. And at this stage, the key issue simply is that people don't understand other people as well as machines and sensors do. So I keep saying it's the sensor silly. What do I mean by that? I simply mean to say that, hey, listen, people cannot understand people well enough. People are biased. People have biases. Every brand thinker who says, I know my customer, I mean, come on, wake up. I keep going into companies and telling them, brand managers keep telling me in board meetings, sir, we know our customers. I ask him, are you married? He says, yes. How long? 7 years. Do you know your wife? Answers the question straight up. Nobody can understand one other person, your own wife, after being married for 7-10 years. How dare you say, I understand my customers. Customers is an aggregate. Customers cannot be understood as aggregates. Customer is one. You can understand one person after living with them for 20 years, but you can't understand customers. So humans can't understand. So I work on an algorithm, which really is a process. What is an algorithm for me? An algorithm is a simple recipe into the mind of a customer, a set of customers, an aggregated set of people. And what I do is I take this algorithm and marry it to brand chemistry theory. And my brand chemistry theory is related to the fact that people are not rational at all. And that's a fact. I mean, we're not rational. My research in this space tells me that if we are all of 100, we are only 78 of us is irrational, and only the balance 22 of us is rational. It simply means to say that irrational theory is what you need to invest into. And irrational theory That 78 portion is all about brand chemistry. Brand chemistry is not understood. A brand is a thought that lives in a person's mind. But if you do a blood test on the person, you will not find a brand. You do a urine test, you will not find a brand. You do a psychographic test on the individual, you'll find the brand. So what is the meaning of it? It simply means to say that the brand is not a physical entity, right? Apple is not Apple Inc. It's not Apple Alpha, anything that is represented physically. Apple is not a physicality. Apple is not the phone. It's not the iPad. Apple is not a physicality. Apple is what I call a metaphysicality. What is a metaphysicality? It's a metaphysical thought that lives in your mind, which creates the chemistry. That chemistry drives your buy in or buy out. And that chemistry is what we need to invest in understanding. So I look at it in a process which is algorithmic. I build an algorithm into the mind of specific sets of consumers, and we do it across 26 categories today. I do it in auto, I do it in cosmetics, I do it in garments, I do it in healthcare, I do it in, you can go on and on and on. I have 26 different categories. And guess what? It's a formula. It's an algorithm. And this algorithm is the route to the future of branding.
Well said. And I wanted to just elaborate this a little bit further. You see, the orgasm and the dopamine hit also leads to repletion in your brain, which means, is this an antithesis to loyalty? Just to get an orgasm again and again, and the depletion returns to that experience, would consumers or customers look forward to switching just to experience the same level or an increasing level of orgasm from a particular experience? We do see that, again, the 70-30 rule that you just said, there will be 70% who comply to the norms. The other 30% would have extra brand experience rather than extramarital, I would say.
Yeah. Let me put it this way. It's a very good question. Please note that as far as a consumer is concerned, consumer is irrational. Consumer operates bulk of the times with an irrational mentality and a small number of times with the rational. So let's say 78-22. And my 78-22 theory simply says that if this is the way he, she, or they operates, please note that there is nothing called brand loyalty. Brand loyalty is anti-gravity. In fact, loyalty itself is anti-gravity. I keep saying that something is kept held up somewhere, fundamentally because of gravity. There is something, gravity is pulling that thing down, but these four fingers are holding it up. What's holding up loyalty? Religion, society, peer pressure, parental pressure. These are anti-gravity forces. If these four were not there, we would all be totally disloyal, which simply means to say that we are all animals. And if you and I and all of us are animals, none of us is loyal. Whenever I say this, to an audience, I was in Berlin some time ago. A guy put up his hand and said that, Mr. Bijoor, you can't say this. I mean, there are animals which are very loyal. So I asked which one. He said the dog. I said, please peep into the personal life of the dog and come back. All I need is that loyalty is anti-gravity. Therefore, brand loyalty is again yet another concept so yesteryears. Professor David Acker's seminal book on managing brand equity has chapter 2 as brand promiscuity. In my new book, chapter 9 is brand promiscuity. So brand loyalty does not exist. It is brand promiscuity that exists. So I think the new era and age is full of brand promiscuity. People will not stick with one brand. What is the meaning of that? It simply means to say that if you've developed a brand and if you've gotten into the chemistry of the individual, you need to understand the changing chemistry of that individual as well. You need to have your finger on the pulse of that individual, and you should be able to change as he, she, or they change. And guess what? This change, crazily, in the millennial used to be once in 18 months, there was change. In the alpha generation, which I work with as of today, I work with 13, 14-year-old kids in terms of understanding how they're changing. Guess what? It's happening in 8 months. So an 18-month cycle of change is now a shorter cycle of change of 8 months. Give it another 6 to 8 years, it'll go to a 2-year cycle change, which means to say that marketers cannot be sleeping. Marketers need to be awake. Marketers cannot depend on traditional research. Marketers cannot depend on cycle time, which are longer. You have to have your finger on the pulse of the changing consumer. Marketers need to be ahead of the curve. And I think in terms of customer service, offering the highest degree of customer service, which I call CO, is possibly the best thing to do. CO is the future.
I definitely agree with you on this. And, as the topic of our podcast was, is achieving CEO possible in healthcare? Healthcare
Sure.
is a very complex service business, apart
Yes.
from the different products also that come
Yeah.
into it from the pharmaceutical, from med tech, med device, and other
Yeah.
things. Do you think, and we have in our health and life sciences investment manifesto, the number one thing is what you are talking about, the compression of the cycles, loyalty, and consumer attitudes changing in a shorter period of time. Post COVID, our researchers actually we are calling it a health and wellness fascism,
Yeah. Well
which
put.
means basically they are revolting against the current way health and wellness is being delivered to them pre-COVID to post-COVID, and they want to break away from those shackles into a new norm or a new way of consuming these sort of services and products. And that is where the whole crisis for healthcare players is. And we've kind
Absolutely.
of delved a lot about that and what needs to be done. Do you feel that healthcare would be a very different sector as compared to other sectors, given its complicated value chain process in delivering the services to the end consumer? How do you think it will vary or differ from others in delivering this customer orgasm?
Well, Kapil, this question is very important for all of us to answer. And I'm going to answer it from my personal experience in the healthcare category. So I work with different verticals in health. Okay. So at one end, I work with pharma companies who have molecules which are already ready, molecules which we take to the market and are strictly governed by the prescription route. And then I also work in the OTC realm, and that's a second way where the product is made in a factory and the factory actually sends it out, and then it's a matter of distribution and getting consumer franchise through regular means. And then the third category is healthcare services, and the services delivery is really at the hospitals and the clinics and at the PHCs that many countries operate. And the fourth one is of course medical devices, which is a separate realm altogether, which is very B2B. But then even medical devices have a B2C avatar. And at the end of the day, the mother category of it all is Mother Watson. So if you look at the entire situation, when I look at these categories, let me take just one vertical because we'll not have time to talk about every one of these healthcare verticals. Needless to say, I'll not take client names for obvious reasons of strict NDAs, etc. But
I appreciate that.
I'm going to talk to you about the fact that healthcare, for instance, I work with healthcare majors where, the service is offered, a large number of hospitals, chains, large number of beds across the world, fantastic per bed outcomes for those hospital chains. Extremely important for us to change very dramatically everything that we do. The healthcare category is getting very demanding. Okay. And guess what? The healthcare category is in the deepest angst as of today. And if I may take the example of what happened on the 4th of December in New York with the United Healthcare CEO getting shot, that's the ultimate end of the angst, if you really look at it. So there's a deep angst at one end, and there's a deep degree of passion for Medicare, medical professions, etc. Now, the angst rests with organized medicine. This is organized medicine at one end. And the passion rests with unorganized. Now, my problem is, and the problem of the entire world is going to be in the future, that medicine has gotten too organized. Yes, that's why it's made such inroads, such major inroads in cure and category management, etc. But then people don't understand that. People tend to say that medicine has become a bit too organized. It's become too corporatized. There's no heart in medicine. There's no heart in Medicare. There's no heart in medical insurance. Okay, and allied spun-offs around medical offerings. Therefore, what's really happening is at one end you have respect, very eminent respect, and that eminent respect is for a character who I call the family doctor. So the family doctor or the local doctor within the hinterland of about 2 kilometers of where you stay, who you go to, who charges a pittance of a fee to see you. And in India, we still have the luxury that you can walk into a clinic, which you don't have in UK or in large parts of the world, where, Medicare is strictly governed under, appointment rules, etc. Now, please note, there are countries in the world which are with the family doctor. Out here, branding still remains remains the way it used to. But where we have gone into corporatized medicine, branding needs to change very, very dramatically. Because please note, you cannot do the same thing that you were doing last year in Medicare dispensation. You cannot. I know the medical profession is burdened. The number of patients they handle are just too many. The doctors are far too few. The specialists are even fewer, etc., etc., etc. But that doesn't mean that you ignore the most important element in your chain, which is the patient. The patient is not patient anymore. Patient is becoming very demanding. And in this demanding spectrum, patient is going to ask for a lot of things to be done to him from the other end. Therefore, let's get into a hospital chain, let's say network. The hospital must not look like a hospital at all. Sadly, it does look a little too much like a hospital. The hospital must look like a hospital at least. Sadly, it's starting to look like a business corporate headquarters. The entire process, the system of registration, the system of fee taking, the system of prescription, the system of cross-referencing, the system of second opinions, etc. They're just too corporatized. So I think we need to make change in this terrain. This change must happen, immediately. Because if you don't make this change, the medical profession itself is going to get a bad name. And I think a bad name means a bad brand name. We need to ensure that the entire profession of medicine, benign as it is, must get a very benign trajectory to follow. And I think following the process of offering better to the customer, beyond that, just service is something that we need to come. And I think that will solve problems. So my customer orgasm theory actually spans from the first point of entry of your introduction to a hospital to the last point of exit from the hospital to the point when you actually receive the printed copy of the bill or the e-copy of the bill. There are as many as 91 touch points.
91?
These 91 touch points need to be touched in depth. By the way, it's not simple as 91 touch points, but each touch point has a weightage. And some touch points have far greater weightage than the others. And so I take these 91 touch points and then I put it onto my algorithm. And that's how you'd like to build something called customer orgasm. It has nothing to do with sex, unfortunately, but it's got everything to do with the customer who needs to be satisfied in the best possible manner.
I've been from the healthcare and do a lot of work in healthcare for the last 30 years.
Yes.
And one of the things that we are challenged is a trained manpower which can deliver that experience and happiness to the customer.
Absolutely.
Because at every touch point, there are different individuals, nurses, the specialists, the housekeeping, the food, the dietitian, across the whole process. I'm just taking the hospital as a... And what has happened is, post-COVID, there's a lot of resistance and mindset issue that has crept in the healthcare services business.
True.
And which is why the whole topic is achieving customer orgasm possible in healthcare. It's getting more unionized in India, and there's a lot of fascism. Customers don't now believe the doctor. They would rather go to Google Auntie and check or take a second opinion or a third opinion, whatever way, before they even take a decision. So the trust factor is another aspect of, I think we have had a long podcast on this issue as well, post-COVID. Now, these are some of the components adding on to what you've just said on the healthcare side. You think we need to radically redesign the way healthcare has to be delivered now, whether it's at home or in a hospital or in a clinic or in any other setting, whether virtually through telemedicine? You think it's time that we need to really radically reform and redesign this whole healthcare delivery system, whether it's in India or globally?
Absolutely. I think, if you look at the fact that, in healthcare delivery at a hospital, let's say I've identified 91 touch points. So these 91 touch points are today being delivered physically in some manner or the other. There's a wee bit of a website intermediation at both ends after the exit and before the entry, but that's where it stops. But what we have done is to best, as of now, with the development of AI, the way it has gone, I'm working very closely with AI agents and the ability to build AI agents into this network. So as at the 31st of December 2024, which is 2-3 days ago, I have been successful in getting out of those 91, 13 have been automated completely. And I'm thrilled
Lovely.
about it. I'm thrilled about it. Yes, 13 as a subset of 91 is small. But believe it or not, releasing the bandwidth of human being intervention across 13 of these interfaces itself is a big thing. And if these 13 interfaces are freed up, it means to say that the people who are doing this work can now be freed to do other work within the same hospital. And that's exactly what we have attempted. And I've done a pilot, and we just finished the pilot, the 3-month pilot, which started in September, ended on 31st of December. We're really saying that if 13 can go this way, can it go to 20 tomorrow? By tomorrow, I mean at the end of the year. Because my AI ability is still so rustic. I mean, it's so rustic
It
that
is.
I can't where I want to be. So, but I'm excited. I'm excited by two things, Kapil. One is the fact that quantum computing is going to be amidst us sooner than later. And the soonest that I'm looking at is 18 months, and the latest is maybe never. I don't know. But if quantum computing actually kicks off, imagine my ability to look at terabits of data, which are humongous, and the churn time of that data being quick. So much so that, the estimation is we'll run out of data to churn. That means we need to get data from all kinds of sources to actually be able to churn. So quantum computing plus AI is manna from heaven for me. But yes, it's only 13 out of 91. Let's see how far we can go.
I agree. There's a long way. And we have also been grappling a lot on, how do we automate? How do we digitize? A lot of the history of a person is on paper, and a lot of the digital stuff is on different systems. Like, for instance, my watch is capturing certain things, my blood pressure, and oxygen, and so many parameters. That is on somebody else's cloud, like Google or Apple. There are certain other tracking devices which is on somebody else. And there's no way an AI can capture all of this together to break that shackle and provide it at the desktop of
Yeah.
whoever the caregiver is at the last mile.
Yeah.
And this is a problem that we have been trying to solve for the last 10 years, or before AI, there was big data. So we were trying to
Yes.
use the big data, and our algos being whatever, being from an algo-based hedge fund experience as well. There's a lot of silos and data gaps, which does not help us or prevents us from leading forward. I'm glad you've already achieved a great, almost about 16-17% coverage, but it's a very uphill battle
Yes.
and a very incremental effort from here on till you reach the apex of 91. How do we solve this issue to really leverage the power of AI, leveraging the excess bandwidth into customer delight and experiential stuff? And thirdly, the whole engagement process, instead of being in silos, is really collaborative.
Absolutely. I think this is a key point, a moot point to discuss, because, agents, our AI agents are going to be numerous. Okay.
Yeah,
Even
I know
today,
Microsoft has just talked about Satya Nadella is
yeah,
re-architecting the whole AI architecture.
absolutely. But what we have experimented with is I have AI agents and agents and agents. I need an agent of the agents, in the sense that different agents need to marry one another and become that one agent. And that agent cannot be one, but they need to marry the agent of the agents, need to marry one another and become that big agent. Now, the thing is, this is a movement which is slightly away as far as I'm concerned. My vision in this space is rather limited, and therefore I would say it's going to take a long, long time to happen. But on the process of the agent of the agents, I think we're just working on it. I think it's a way to go, because at the end of the day, automation has come in, the agent is in, and this agent is getting to be more and more sentient as the days go by. And this ability is through the ML process that is so slow. But if that ML process can be hastened with quantum computing coming in the way it's going to come, I am hopeful that we are going to be having a collaborative network of agents who are going to talk to one another. Look at what's happening in the space of auto. So if you look at auto, I mean, some of my auto clients, I do work with the autonomous vehicle category, okay, and I'm also working in the space of the eco-friendly vehicle, the CO2 vehicle, the vehicle which grabs in CO2 and brings out H2O, okay. okay, which is the ultimate that you can look at. So if you look at this entire space in auto, we are talking about autonomous vehicles where one is marrying another and another and another. The autonomous vehicle is marrying every little road bump into its learning, every little traffic signal into its learning, every way in which a different model of car is driven by different types of people. It's looking at age groups, age profiles, and eventually one car is talking to another car. So at the end of the day, in an ideal environment, when all cars are talking to all cars, we mustn't have accidents at all, unless one car becomes a rogue car, like what we just witnessed in New
And the
Orleans a
Matrix.
few years ago. But the point is, in a normal traditional world, I will find autonomous vehicles connected to one another, and that is the new neural system, and that new neural system is the new intelligence. So just imagine the same thing coming into the hospital category, where each of my agent is a part of the neural system, of the neural network. Maybe I'll have 20,000 agents all connected together, and at the end of the day, they create the entire digital nervous system of my hospital chain. My hospital chain today has a physical nervous system. The physical nervous system becomes a digital nervous system, and that is when I achieve what I want to achieve, with hundreds and thousands of sensors, with algorithms which work beautifully in a particular route. And that's the point of time when we can say, this customer journey which you guys were working on and with for such a long period of time, Harish, Bijoor, you are an idiot. You worked with it and you made a name for yourself basis the work on that. You are now exposed. All that is bunkum. The reality is what you can do with the digital neural system of a hospital chain, and how that neural system is alive, kicking, becoming more and more sentient every day. And with that, it means with sentient behavior comes emotive behavior. One of the biggest missing elements in the hospital delivery mechanism across the world is that emotive appeal, the way in which you talk to a patient. Or if you can bring that back in through technology, technology is a blessed thing. If not, it's a cursed.
I wanted to when you just talked about talk, a problem in India is the diversity of languages and dialects, and
Yes.
the last mile connectivity between diagnosing what the patient's issue is the doctor who talks in the same language.
Absolutely.
And even Microsoft, I've been having a lot of discussions with Microsoft, is the only player in India, not even Google, which has created 23 languages
Yes.
in their Azure cloud and is now working on translational and other models on these languages. So it's great if we are English or Spanish or some other language which is fairly global. But in India, the biggest challenge would still be the gatekeeper, which is the doctor, who talks in the local language to understand what the patient is saying and be able to diagnose that, which I believe will take a far longer time than is potentially possible on the tech. So that's one counter trend,
Yes.
I believe, that will delay or which may arrest the progress of AI dominating into our healthcare system.
Which
The
is true,
second,
Kapil, because if you look at language, it is the biggest boundary that you draw, in the sense that English is so different world. The biggest language challenges that I face across the globe is the ability with Spanish, for instance. Spanish gives me inroads into n numbers of countries. French again, and therefore it's really not only Hindi, English, Spanish, French, but it's 6 other languages which will give me a reach to, even then, only 89% of the earth. Only 89% of the earth with 6 languages. But 89 is better than what I get today. Just to correlate that question of yours with my actual experience, I do work with a hospital chain, and in Bangalore, for instance, they have a hub, and in the Bangalore hub, they employ people who speak first language, that they employ 6 people in one hospital who speak Bengali,
I
because
know
this hospital
part of
in
their patients are coming from
Bengaluru,
there.
this hospital in Bengaluru gets about 21% of patients from Bengal, and which simply means to say that you need a Bengali. Odia is the second language they need to know, because again, these are distant spaces from which people come in there, and they are taking these people in. And I think if it's a global hospital chain, Spanish is big, French is big, again, English and Hindi, very necessary if you look at it. Tamil, very necessary necessary. A person who speaks Tamil will not be adept or will not want to speak Hindi, and
Hindi.
vice versa maybe. So it's extremely important. Language is a big boundary. I know that needs to be eased out, but again, I'm hopeful of translation packages, voice translation coming in a big way, because data is so. I mean, the written data is so gone, right? We're really talking about
Hmm.
voice, and if it's voice is equal to translation, the ability to translate. So I think we should get there.
I'm also equally hopeful. I
Yeah,
wanted to talk about alternative medicine
yeah,
because that's also one aspect of health and wellness fascism that has emerged
yeah,
within the consumer. They don't want to believe into modern medicine and want to probably accept alternative medicine.
yeah.
And I've worked very closely with various, institutions which are doing some cutting edge work in alternative medicine. And India could become the hub for alternative medicine. What is preventing? And you've done a lot of work on branding of India and geographies and stuff like that, tourism. I wanted to understand. We did some work on yoga also. We called in a couple of yoga gurus also on our podcast in the past. I
Oh,
am just wanting to understand how do we bring that alternative medicine back into mainstream and be integrative with our modern medicine practices so that the consumer actually gets an orgasm and a
yeah.
better care and outcome.
Sure. See, if I look at my experience stems from the space of Ayurveda and Unani. And again, homeopathy is not something that I've ever
No,
touched. But my experience in these two spaces tell me very clearly that there are holistic systems of medicine which were there even before medicine happened, which
correct.
simply means to say that the real medicine is real stuff that comes from the jari booties of this country, the roots and the twigs and n numbers of berries and stuff like that. And ancient India knew this very well. And I think if you really look at the government of India initiatives with Ayush and the entire practitioners of Ayush and the focus on how to take it forward, the government itself is very geared towards it. And it's a great thing. If you look at it, medicine can be divided into two, which all of us are so familiar with. One is preventive, the other is curative. The curative is the one we focus on, the preventive is the one we don't focus on. So if you ask me the alternate systems of medicine, they do fantastic work in the preventive stage. So I think the preventive kind of work needs a big push through holistic, which means to say that in preventive medicine, I mean, there should not be the role for a tablet at all. Okay, tablet is a bad word to use, but the point is you don't want something which is so chemical
Orally
that
ingest.
you don't want to take it. So there's something called holistic versus the tablet, let's say. Now between these two things you don't want. So preventive is a big space. Now if you can prevent things from happening, then the curative, the burden on creative goes down. But then that's the usual thing that people say. There's something called a pharma lobby, and the pharma lobby loves the curative and loves everything that goes on in the rest of the space. That's a malignant comment to make, and I don't believe in it thoroughly. But the point is, customers and patients seem to think that way. So if they think that way, so be it. You need to cater to their thoughts in their mind. And therefore, if you want to look at it, I think the preventive portion of it is big. And we have plenty of roles out here. Catching the child young in terms of nutrition, the kind of stuff that the child eats, also stopping some of the kind of stuff that a child typically eats. Because the first 30 years of my life, I've eaten the best of junk food. Okay. Now, when I say best of junk food, you know what I mean. My mouth waters when I think of all those finger licking good stuff I used to eat. Now, the thing is, post that, it's very important for you. So something bites you. Suddenly, I mean, India is the capital of many a disease. We're the capital of hypertension, capital of diabetes, capital of 4 other lifestyle diseases that we talk about. If you talk about thyroid, undetected instances of thyroid, goes on and on, right? Now, if you have to get into that preventive space, it needs to start in school. And therefore, I think the most benign medical organizations or medical businesses in the country must take on a new avatar. They need to take on a preventive avatar. Existing hospital chains must have split into two. They must have a preventive business philosophy and a curative business philosophy. The preventive business philosophy must dominate, and the curative must be a subset of that. If you don't do it, someone else will do it. So I keep talking to my clients, and I have already done a fair bit of work with many of them where we have got, it's a yin and a yang. preventive
Correct.
and curative. It should be 52-48. But today, preventive is 0.01 and 99.99 literally is the rest of it, which is curative. Because money is in the curative, and therefore you need to look at it. Now, again, in preventive, I'm saying there is a role for the pharma enterprise in preventive as well. For instance, some of my big clients, one who's a major client in the US, he's literally in the top two. And for him, it's business as well. Yeah. Because I tell him, hey, listen, there is something called preventive, and preventive is the space for vaccination as well. Okay. Which means to say that preventive vaccination is plenty of space, plenty of scope. And if you really look at the price of vaccines in the country, yeah, they're much, much cheaper than what they are in the US or in Europe. But then they do cost a bomb. There's plenty of money in preventive, my dear folks. Get in there. You will get blessings of the consumer. In addition,
I
you're getting
agree
money.
with you. In fact, that's the whole issue of fascism and the new norms, which people now are calling as self-care or value health products and management. People don't want to get into a doctor's clinic or a hospital unless and until, right? So there is a spend.
Here, I must add one thing, Kapil. I have a good team which does a lot of consumer research in India and in
Hmm.
UK and in certain parts of Europe. So this is a permanent team. Now this team went in and found out with consumers in India, which is the place that you never ever want to enter into. Okay. The first was, and the medical profession will be happy with this, is the police station. They don't want to be in a police station. And the second is a hospital. Because, and guess what? The
And third is a
third
lawyer.
no, the third is a crazy place. They don't want to take their car for a service
Oh,
because
okay.
they do believe that, a lot happens in a car service. And many people give me correlations between a car being serviced at a service center and entering into a hospital for a human being to be serviced. Do you understand that analogy? It simply means to say that by the time my car has been given to my agent, the organization, by 11 o'clock he calls me up and he gives me a list of 23 things that need to be changed. Out of these
OEM
23
parts.
things, maybe the spare parts business,
OEM
21
parts.
don't need changing. 21 don't need changing. I'm talking only about the auto dealer guy. I'm not talking about anything else. But I think all of you understand what I'm talking.
Absolutely. It's good till your body car is working with your OEM parts. Moment you get some of those replaced,
Sure,
then the problems start. Mileage
surely.
problem of your age and life.
Absolutely.
Lovely. I want to direct one conversation on healthcare. People in our business use different tools: patient satisfaction, NPS score, patient reported measurement
Yeah.
outcomes,
Yeah.
online surveys, focus groups, interviews. I mean, you name it. What a typical marketer, tech-based
Yeah.
data scrumming, and then online listening chatter, and then all the benchmarking. Now, if we were to move this whole thing to a customer orgasmic template for healthcare, how would we transition all this into your black box algo? What is
Yeah.
the route to transition there?
Yeah. I don't believe in any of these listening processes that we today utilize. I believe them less and less over the last 8-9 years as my theory of customer orgasm has deepened and it's giving me results with a set of clients. I'm believing less and less in other things. How would I do it? I would simply say that, everything boils down to a simplicity level. To say that I walked into a hospital, I walked out of a hospital, what thought did I walk into the hospital with? What thought did I walk out of the hospital on at a particular point of time? Net of it, what's my thought of the hospital? Because at the end of the day, outcomes, it's totally outcome related, of course, but outcome could be death as well, as we know in situations. So it's
That's
a
called a
question of saying,
fatal event, a fatal outcome in
yeah, it's
healthcare.
totally quite a fatal one. But the point is, if you've gotten out of the hospital and if you entered with a set of expectations, a set of thoughts, how did you come out with? And I think this data is not available anyway. Your listening systems need to be very, very superior. So what do we do? Your listening systems need to be, even subliminal listening systems. So there are a lot of people, a lot of us think that people, went out there fury on digital mediums. Absolutely no, yeah. If there are 10 people who are affected, and this is as per research evidence which I pulled out of 17,800 plus sample size, it's only about 4 months old. If there are 10 people who are affected by something, the number of people who talk about it is 0.16. 0.16. It's a sub 1, and within that it's 0.16, which means to say that if I don't listen to that 0.16 even, I'm losing it all. And a lot of people talk about things which are not closely related to their real pain. So getting to the real pain is a different process of understanding. It's literally like, market research is so basic. It just asks you yes, no, or an objective type of set of questions. You can't get it out of that kind of. It has to be a peeling of the onion of the patient. So the first level is peeled on day 1. On day 6, the second level is. On day 9, literally, this is a kind of market research psychiatry work going on. So this is psychological. It is the skills of psychiatry coming into the space, the skill of a science of listening, overriding the skill of the science of writing, the skill of the science of talking, the skill of the science of shouting. Much of the research that I notice in medical-led organizations is very guided research, and guided research does not work. Research which is a paramecium does not work, a single-celled paramecium. Research that is amoebic, again a single cell, but amoebic is what works. So the kind of work I do in the space of listening mechanisms is very amoebic. I believe in market research thoroughly, but I don't believe in the old tools of market research. I keep saying every step you take, every breath you take, market research away, but not in the old way. Market research has got a bad name because a lot of people tend to say that it gobbles up a lot of money, it doesn't give me anything back. Yeah, it doesn't, because the methodology with which you research is not correct. It's garbage in, garbage out. There are a lot of people, couple, who don't even want to tell you their name when you meet. So you meet a lady on the road at 8 p.m. and she's going shopping. You just stop her and very politely ask her, ma'am, what is your name? She might not give her name at all. She might even give the Great Indian Thappad, which is Great Indian slap. Why? What's in a name? Hang on. Stop a little more with the lady and ask her, ma'am, what is your age? I think she will not tell you her age. And if she does tell you her age, or if he or she tells you the age, let's not make it a gender thing, he will discount his age by 3 years. You ask the same person what your salary is. Depending who is asked, if it is a jealous uncle in Hoshiarpur asking, she'll multiply her salary into 2. But if it's anyone else asking, she will say, salary information is meant to be private. I don't want to talk about it because we don't want the bad eye of the human being falling on. Hey guys, when you ask people questions, people don't reply to you correctly. What does market research do? Ask questions overtly, in the eye, in the face, and you get wrong answers. Garbage in, garbage out. So the entire methodology of market research, particularly in the space of healthcare and in hospitality, equally must change dramatically. What people tell you first is not what they really think about you. What people tell you the third time is what they really think of you. Peel the onion carefully.
I guess my takeaway here is that when you talked about the stat, and a typical market researcher should actually be focusing on the outliers, on the two ends.
Absolutely.
That's where the nuggets of wisdom and the gold is all, where
I agree.
market researchers need to mine rather than the whole bell curve,
I agree.
using their statistics and all the sampling tools and what have you.
I agree. I agree.
Harish, I have one personal question which I wanted to ask you. You see, we have been using our algos of a hedge fund and we do an annual prediction of what the next year, at the end of the previous year, what the next year's healthcare and life sciences investment outlook would be, where what sectors and what components of those sectors will attract investment and or in basically higher investment activity. And I was wanting to kind of think, through your terminology, customer orgasm, it's a currency, it's an investment.
It is.
And it will lead into future gains. Any investment, if made positively, would lead into multiples. And I'm just wondering, in our framework, we every year we make some modification because of different reasons. So a couple of years back, we put in new business models. Around COVID, we included digitization. And with your permission, and then last few years, we actually also included geopolitics as a factor. Because a lot of investment flows into India or going out of India is impacted because of geopolitics. And now I'm really thinking, how do I bring in customer capital or customer orgasm into my framework? And do you think we should attempt it? Because the data, as I said, data still is not there and we have not tracked it this year. Maybe next year we may hope to bring it in as another parameter
Yeah.
into an analysis and a heat map. Do you think it's
No,
a
certainly.
positive move forward
I
for bringing this on into our framework?
Certainly. Kapil, I would be flattered if you were to use it. Simply to say that, when I look at valuation in the old days, I used to look at valuation, as a part of brand valuation you did for
Correct.
an exercise.
Intangibles, may.
Yeah, it is an intangible. We did one for there was an IT services company which was the first to put a brand value on its balance sheet. And therefore, thereafter, we did N numbers for other people. After that, after a few years, we started doing things with the ESG, particularly with the
Yeah.
ESG goals, the Panchamrit goals, and ESG, all
Mm.
the things. Anybody
Correct.
who's ESG is a very, very positive. So for me, and digital as you do, I mean, of course, digitization and digitalization. Digital is a religion in itself. I call it digitalism. It's one of those new religions that we have. It's a great thing to do. The latest could be certainly customer orgasm and the kind of metrics that a company is looking at to create the cutting edge and bleeding edge stuff in customer orgasm. Why do I say it? Because 48 years ago, 42 to 48 years ago, we had customer service and bottom rung. Above the pyramid, you climbed to customer satisfaction. We stayed there for about 11 years. Another 26 years, we stayed with customer delight. And then we come to customer ecstasy. And now we come to customer orgasm. It just means it's a climb. This simply means to say that any company that you're valuing, if the company is still at customer satisfaction level, like most medical services companies are in, so it simply means to say that the guy who is at the customer orgasm stage gets a brownie point which is different than everybody else. So if I was going to give points, I would give 1 point for anybody at customer service, 2 points for anybody at customer satisfaction, 3 points for anybody at customer delight, 4 points for anybody at customer ecstasy, and 5 points for somebody who's at customer orgasm. So I think that would be a metric which would be interesting to take.
Lovely. Before I let you know, I have a few rapid fire questions and a few personal ones as well, if you don't mind.
Okay. Let me see how I'll handle it.
So I wanted to know who has influenced the most in shaping your ideas and thought.
Oh, very simple. This is Mahatma Gandhi. I've loved him, and I do believe his thinking is par excellence.
And who do you consider as your guru in the space that you are now working in?
Well, I'll put it this way. I had an ex-boss of mine called R.K. Krishnakumar. He passed away recently. And R.K. Krishnakumar was with the Tatas, and he was my boss at what is today Tata Consumer Products Limited. I consider him to be a guru as far as I'm concerned.
Lovely.
I miss him.
I have dealt with him at some point in time at the Taj group when he was on the Tata Sons and the board of the Taj and things. Very briefly, I dealt with him, and a very serious guy to learn a lot with. One last question I want to talk about is your career and work is very inspirational and followed upon. How did you go about building it, and why are you still not very on the social media stuff as an influencer? You're still below the radar. You're not got your CEO.
Well, I'll put it this way. My ultimate influence is Mahatma Gandhi ji. Okay. And if you look at Mahatma Gandhi ji, I think, Mahatma Gandhi happened by accident in many, many ways. And literally everything that happened to him was very, very unique. Whether he got thrown out of a train in Durban, whether he did the Dandi Salt Yatra, whether he took up non-violence as something unique. But he took up stuff that was unique. So I've continued choosing stuff that's unique. I'm nowhere near the Mahatma Gandhi. But then the point is, he's an inspiration for all of us. Whoever you can look up to is an inspiration. Now, why am I off the radar? For similar reasons. I've always believed, you see, my business consulting practice and the brand strategy practice that I run, we don't have a website. Okay. We have a window of 3 pages, which was put together 25 years ago when I started. And we don't have cases of clients. I don't list client names. I don't tell anybody who my clients are. Nowhere will you find my work anywhere. People ask me, then how do you get work? We get plenty of work. How do you get work? We get plenty of work by word of mouth. And that's the ultimate. So I think word of mouth is the ultimate praise that you can get. The more you're off the radar, the better it is. And therefore, I don't do a blog. I don't run, stuff like that.
Enigmatic, I would say.
Yeah,
to a lot of people.
It's always good. It's always good to be a little off the radar because it gives you breathing space. It doesn't keep you in a space where you have to remain artificially. So I'd rather find that water must find its own level, and I hope my water is finding its own level. That's all I want.
I do hope sometime in life you will share all the nuggets of wisdom as part of learning for other people. I just do hope. Lastly, what is the number one advice you'll give to individual doctors and healthcare influencers who would like to develop their own personal brands and social media profile?
Okay. Firstly, I don't believe in personal branding at all. And therefore, I keep saying that, I keep telling people, I do work with politicians and I tell politicians and with cricketers and with film stars. I don't take any work where they want to be represented differently. So I tell people, if you're a rogue, focus on the fact that you're a rogue and I will help you. But if you're a rogue and you want to look like a nice guy, I can't help you. So if you're a wolf, be a wolf. Don't be a wolf in sheep's clothing. Personal branding must stay close to the truth of who you are. So my advice to anybody is, yes, get into personal branding, but stay totally close to the truth. If you are 100 of something, talk 95. Don't talk 100 even. Because if you talk 100, people will come to you looking for 100. They will get 100. They get 0 positive, 0 negative, and they dump you and go. If you're 100, don't talk 150 because they'll throw you out. If you're 100, don't talk 10 even because then you're not on the radar at all. Like the line you use for me. I mean, you're not on the radar at all. But talk 95, yeah, which means to say stay close to the truth. So simple line and lesson in personal branding: stay who you are, be who you are, stay close to the truth, talk the truth, maybe, but 5% less than what you really are. I think you'll succeed. Extremely important for you. I just in new lingo, I say you be you. You be you. That's
With these nuggets of wisdom, I'm really glad, Harish, we had a conversation and opened a few nuggets of wisdom from your side to our listeners as well. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I always
Thank you.
enjoy meeting you and talking to you right from my Britannia days when
Sure.
we were in the same business and meeting you at the airports after that and bumping into
Sure.
each other and having those small conversations. But
Sure.
was a real great talk that I've had in this year, and I would
Thank
look
you.
forward to sharing a lot of the feedback that's coming from our listeners as well with you in the future. Thanks a lot for your time, and
Thank
from
you.
my team as well and our sponsors for putting this all together. Love the time that you've talked about and really candidly discussed the issues in front of us and opened it to the public.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot
Thank you. Vicky.
and have a
Pleasure
nice
being
year
here.
ahead.
Same to you.
Bye
Bye.
bye.